My mother called while I was standing in the executive test kitchen with 3 induction burners open on the counter. That should have been my first warning not to answer. My second warning was Vivian Ashby standing 6 feet away. I ignored both. Hey, Mom. Are you working? When have you ever cared? Good point. Your sister says you're coming Sunday. I told Cassie maybe. That means yes. I'm making pot roast. I leaned against the stainless steel island while one of our engineers checked a temperature sensor. Arden Housewares had spent 9 months developing a countertop induction system that was supposed to recognize pan size automatically. At the moment, it recognized one pan correctly and appeared personally offended by the other 2. Vivian had come downstairs from the executive floor because she distrusted any test results summarized in an email. She stood across the room in a dark plum suit, reading a thermal report while pretending not to listen to my mother. Mom continued, "And when are you finally bringing a girlfriend home?" I closed my eyes. Mom. What? You cannot ask that every month. I skipped November. That doesn't improve it. Your sister brings Neil. Neil is her husband. Exactly. Very convenient. One of the engineers coughed to cover a laugh. I turned my back to the room. I don't have a girlfriend. You've said that for 2 years. Because it remains accurate. Then find one by Sunday. Excellent. I'll check inventory. Behind me, Vivian set down the thermal report. I should have ended the call. Instead, Mom said, "I'm serious, Reed. One of these days I'd like to meet someone important to you before I'm 90. You're 63. I'm planning ahead." A hand appeared beside my shoulder. Before I understood what Vivian was doing, she took the phone out of mine. I spun around. She lifted it to her ear. "Mrs. Mercer?" I stared at her. Every engineer in the test kitchen stopped pretending to work. Vivian's expression remained perfectly composed. "Yes, this is Vivian Ashby." A pause. Then something changed in her eyes. "My reputation is exaggerated." I could hear my mother talking rapidly through the speaker. Vivian looked at me, then said, "Sunday, Mom?" The engineer nearest the sink dropped a spoon. I reached for the phone. Vivian stepped neatly out of range. "Yes, noon works." "Vivian." She ignored me. "No, please don't change the menu." Another pause. Her gaze sharpened. "The workshop?" My stomach tightened. Mom said something else. Vivian's attention moved fully to me. "I understand." Then, unbelievably, she smiled. Not her investor smile. Not the thin professional curve that meant a meeting had ended and everyone should leave. A real one. "We'll bring work clothes." I finally got the phone back. "Mom, I'll call you later." "Don't you dare cancel." I said I'll call you later. "And tell Vivian I like pecan pie." The line went dead. I stared at the phone. Then at my CEO. Vivian picked up the thermal report again. "Pan 2 is still running 7 degrees hot." "No." She looked up. "No, we are not discussing induction burners. We are in the induction test kitchen. You just volunteered to go home with me." "Yes." "To meet my mother." "Yes." "As what?" The room had become silent enough that I could hear the ventilation system. Vivian glanced toward the engineers. Everyone out. Nobody needed clarification. 30 seconds later, we were alone. I folded my arms. "You cannot take my phone and appoint yourself girlfriend." I did not use the word girlfriend. "You said Sunday, Mom." She told me to call her mom. She tells restaurant servers to call her mom if they refill coffee fast enough. I liked her. "You spoke for 90 seconds. That was sufficient." I stared at Vivian Ashby and wondered, not for the first time, whether people who ran companies eventually lost some basic fear normal humans had of making situations strange. Vivian had been CEO of Arden Housewares for 3 years. I was a senior product development manager 4 levels below her, which meant she did not approve my timesheets or salary but could still terrify half the building by asking one calm question in a prototype review. She was 38, brilliant, aggressively private, and so difficult to read that most employees believed she had only 3 emotional states: dissatisfied, considering dissatisfaction, and briefly unavailable for comment. I knew better. I knew she hated pears but liked pear jam. I knew she never ate until everyone else at the table had been served. I knew she could walk into a chaotic product kitchen and remember exactly which drawer someone had opened 20 minutes earlier. I also knew she had been finding increasingly weak reasons to stay after our late meetings for almost a year. Nothing had happened. Neither of us had been brave or foolish enough to make it happen. Until apparently today. What did my mother say about the workshop? Vivian's expression shifted. I already knew the answer would hurt. She said the estate company starts clearing it Monday. I looked away. The test kitchen suddenly felt too bright. My father's workshop occupied the detached garage behind the house where I grew up in Maple Run, Ohio. He had died 6 years earlier, and my mother had spent most of those 6 years refusing to change anything substantial in that building. Then she finally sold the house. Closing was 3 weeks away. I knew the workshop had to be emptied. I had not known Monday was the day. Vivian watched me carefully. She said, "There's a table." I shoved both hands into my pockets. "Yeah. What table?" "An unfinished one." "Your father's?" "Yes." "Do you want it?" That question should have been easy. It wasn't. The table had been sitting under a canvas drop cloth since the week my father died. 8 feet of unfinished white oak. Top joined but not flattened. Legs cut but never fitted. One corner still carrying the pencil marks he had made the last Saturday we worked together. I had opened the workshop door maybe 5 times in 6 years. "I don't know," I said. Vivian did not try to solve that. "Good." Then she said, "Your mother told me to wear something I don't mind getting sawdust on. You are not going." Her eyebrows lifted. "You invited yourself into my family before I could stop you." "I'm correcting the problem." I already agreed. To my mother. Not me. That landed. Vivian set the report down again. "What would make it acceptable?" "Nothing you can arrange." I asked a question, Reed. I took a breath. "If you come Sunday, you come as Vivian. Not CEO of Arden. No drivers sitting outside. No company car. No expensive hostess gift. No offering to buy the house, store the workshop, hire movers, restore furniture, or make one phone call that turns my family problem into an Arden logistics problem." Her eyes narrowed slightly at the length of the list. "Anything else?" "You do not tell my mother we're dating." "We aren't." "Good. Keep knowing that." A pause. Then Vivian nodded. "All right." I didn't trust how easily she agreed. "Budget for the hostess gift?" $25. "That is punitive. It's my mother's house, not a diplomatic summit." Vivian considered. "Can I bring pie?" "If it costs less than $25. Your mother specifically requested pecan." "She was testing you." "I intend to pass." "Of course she did." I picked up the thermal report and handed it back. "Now you can worry about pan too." Vivian took the pages. But before returning to the test, she said, "Read." "What?" "If you want the table, don't let Monday decide for you." I looked at her. She had just dragged herself into my Sunday and nearly triggered a family crisis with one sentence. But she was right about that, which was extremely irritating. I had already bought a house. My mother didn't know. Neither did Vivian. That was deliberate. It was a small 1940s brick bungalow in Clintonville with narrow stairs, a detached garage, and a kitchen that had survived at least 3 decades without anyone successfully convincing it that beige laminate should die. I loved it. Closing was 19 days away. For most of my adult life, I had treated home ownership the same way some people treated expensive cookware, something I would buy when the rest of life justified it. Marriage. Family. A reason to need more than one bedroom. Then I turned 34, looked around my apartment, and realized I had been waiting for hypothetical people to authorize a decision I already wanted. So I made an offer. No future wife required. The unfinished table complicated that independence. My father, Thomas Mercer, had been an electrical contractor during the week and an obsessive woodworker on weekends. He believed factory furniture was evidence society had lost patience. He could spend 6 hours making a drawer and another 2 explaining why buying one would have been spiritually dangerous. I had learned beside him. Not enough to become him. Enough to know what I was looking at every time I lifted the workshop cover. The table was beautiful even unfinished. And impossible to ignore. Friday night, I drove to Maple Run alone. Mom's house sat on a quiet street lined with maples old enough to have complicated feelings about utility lines. The sold sign in the yard still looked offensive. Mom opened the front door before I knocked. "Where's Vivian?" "It's Friday." "I know. She's coming Sunday." "I was checking whether you changed your mind." "You spoke to her for 90 seconds and now you're invested?" Joanne Mercer had perfected the maternal shrug. "She has a confident voice. She runs a company. So confidence comes with the building." Mom ignored that and pulled me into the kitchen. Half the cabinets were already empty. Moving boxes sat under the breakfast counter labeled in her handwriting, "Condo, Cassie, donate, why do I own this?" The last category was the largest. "You moved the estate clearing up. They had an opening. You could have called." "I did." "You told me you were in a test kitchen." That was today. I booked them yesterday. Mom. She crossed her arms. Reed, I am not keeping your father's shop frozen because you need another 6 months to decide whether one table is allowed to move. That was harsh. Also fair. I followed her outside. Cold air hit the back of my neck as we crossed the yard. The workshop still smelled exactly the same. Cedar shavings. Old machine oil. Dust. My father's peppermint gum, somehow, even though that was impossible. Mom switched on the overhead lights. Nothing had been touched. Pegboards loaded with tools. Clamps. A contractor radio from 2009. Jars full of screws sorted by a logic nobody but Dad had ever understood. And in the middle of the room, under the canvas, the table. I pulled the cover away. The oak had darkened slightly with age. Dad's pencil marks remained near one mortise. Left, 3 out of 8. His handwriting. 6 years disappeared in half a second. Mom stood behind me. The estate company will take the tools we don't mark. Cassie wants the drill press. Neil wants 2 clamps. I'm keeping your father's small hand plane because I like how mad he got when anyone touched it. I ran my fingers along the table edge. And this? I told them not to touch it until Sunday. Why Sunday? She gave me a look. Because I know my son. You knew I'd come? I knew you'd either take it or stand here long enough to finally admit you weren't going to. I hated when she was competent. The table would not fit in my apartment. It would fit in the new bungalow. Eventually. The detached garage had enough space to finish it after closing, but it needed to survive the next 3 weeks first. I had access to a bench at Foundry Street Woodshop, a community cooperative 10 minutes from my current apartment. I could move it there. I could finish it. I could also let it go and stop turning a piece of oak into a referendum on grief. I'm taking it, I said. Mom nodded like she had known before I did. Good. That easy? I was not going to argue with whichever answer you gave me. That is disturbingly healthy. Therapy. I laughed. Then I looked at the table again. I need a truck. Cassie has Neil's. I'll ask them. You could ask your CO. I turned. No. Mom smiled. What? She has access to trucks. She has access to an entire company. Exactly why I'm not asking. Mom leaned against Dad's workbench. So what is she? My CO. That is her job. Mom. What is she to you? I looked toward the pencil mark. I had several possible answers. None simple. Someone I haven't figured out. Mom's expression softened. Good. Good? The women you used to date always arrived already categorized. What does that mean? Appropriate. Fun. Serious. Not serious. Long term. Probably not. You love a label when it saves you from having to be surprised. That sounded suspiciously like Vivian. I did not enjoy realizing that. Mom continued. Let this one be confusing for a minute. She grabbed my phone. I like that. She called you Mom. I especially like that. She invited herself to Sunday dinner. Reed, you are making a very weak case against her. I pulled the canvas back over the table. Then I noticed an old pencil line on the far side of the apron. Not words. Just a height mark. My own initials beside it. RM, 20. I had forgotten that entirely. What's this? Mom looked. Then smiled in a way I didn't trust. Oh. What? Nothing. Mom. She walked toward the door. Sunday. What happened Sunday? You're bringing Vivian. That is not an explanation. No. She turned off the lights. Another reason not to cancel. Vivian arrived at my apartment Sunday morning at 10:42 wearing jeans. I had not known she owned jeans. Apparently she did. Dark denim, black boots, a cream sweater, and a navy field jacket that looked expensive enough to survive one sawdust particle before filing a complaint. In one hand she carried a grocery store bouquet wrapped in brown paper. In the other, a pecan pie. I looked at the flowers. Price? $19.99. And pie? Separate category. No. You gave me a hostess gift budget. The pie was requested food. I stared at her. She stared back. This was exactly how she negotiated supplier contracts. You spent time constructing that argument. Yes. Did you go to a normal grocery store? 2. Why 2? The first pie looked structurally weak. I took the flowers before I laughed. No driver? I drove. No company car? My car. No secret gift in the trunk? Vivian's expression turned offended. You can inspect it. I might. I assumed you would. We drove separately because after dinner I needed to help Cassie load the table. Vivian followed me to Maple Run. Mom opened the door wearing an apron that said whisk taker and hugged Vivian before either of us could prepare. Vivian froze. Not visibly to anyone who didn't know her. I knew her. Her hands lifted half a second too late before returning the hug. Welcome, Mom said. You brought the pie. You requested it. I knew I like you. Mom. What? Vivian took off her jacket. Where can I put this? Anywhere. That answer seemed to trouble her. She looked toward the coat rack, then at the bench, then hung it on the least occupied hook. Within 10 minutes, I discovered another thing about Vivian. She did not know how to be a guest. Mom was stirring gravy. Vivian asked where the plates were. Cassie arrived with Neil and their 2 boys. Vivian took coats before anyone asked. Neil opened wine. Vivian found glasses. Mom told her to sit down. Vivian refilled the water pitcher. Vivian, I said. She turned. Sit. I am helping. You have been here 11 minutes. There are things to do. That is how houses work. Mom pointed a wooden spoon at her. Sit down before I assign you something unpleasant. Vivian looked genuinely uncertain. Then she sat at the kitchen table. Cassie watched the whole thing with enormous interest. My sister was 31 and had been waiting years for my personal life to become entertaining. So, she said, are you 2 dating? No, I said. Vivian said, not yet. I closed my eyes. Cassie grinned. Neil picked up his wine. Mom kept stirring gravy like this was normal. Vivian. What? That answer made it worse. It was accurate. Cassie leaned forward. Have you asked him? Not properly. Why not? I pointed at my sister. You have children. Go manage them. My children are easier than this. Vivian did not look embarrassed. That was almost more dangerous. Lunch happened around the old dining table that had been in the house since before I was born. Too small for 7 people. 1 folding chair added at the corner. Dishes passed hand to hand. Vivian waited until everyone else had food before serving herself. Mom noticed. So polite. Vivian glanced at me. He notices if people start eating before everyone is served. I noticed you do it, I corrected. Same result. Mom smiled. Where'd you learn that? Vivian's fork paused. My aunt ran a boarding house when I was young. That was new. Cassie asked. Like a hotel? 6 rooms over a restaurant in Baltimore. Long-term guests, mostly. I spent summers there. Sounds fun. Vivian looked at her plate. It was busy. Something in her tone ended the question without making it rude. Mom changed the subject. After lunch, Vivian stood automatically to collect plates. Mom slapped her hand lightly with a dish towel. No. Vivian stared. You are going outside with Reed. To the workshop? Yes. What about cleanup? We have survived Sunday dinner without a CEO before. Cassie laughed so hard she nearly spilled coffee. Outside, Vivian exhaled. Your mother hit me. With cotton. She established authority. You respect her now? I respected her immediately. We crossed the yard. I opened Dad's workshop. Vivian stepped inside and stopped. This was the first room all day where she did not immediately search for a task. Her gaze traveled slowly over the bench, clamps, old radio, and finally the canvas-covered table. I pulled the cover off. She walked closer but did not touch it. You made part of this. I frowned. How do you know? She pointed to the height mark. RM, 20. I assume your father was older than 20. Excellent deduction. You're welcome. I ran my hand over the unfinished edge. We started it the summer after my sophomore year of college. Why? I don't remember. Mom's voice came from the doorway. I do. I turned. She carried Dad's old thermos in one hand. You told him there was no reason to build a giant dining table because you were 20 and didn't even have a girlfriend. Vivian looked at me. I suddenly remembered pieces. Heat. Open garage door. Dad drawing something on graph paper. Me teasing him about making furniture for a house I did not own. Mom smiled. Your father said, you don't wait for people before you make room for them. The workshop went quiet. There it was. The thing I had forgotten. Dad had started the table because I said I would build one when I had a wife and a house large enough to need it. He thought that was backward. Mom rested the thermos on the bench. He said you build the table first. Then you find out who shows up. Vivian did not look at me. She looked at the unfinished oak. I understood why. That stupid sentence sounded far too close to my mother asking when I would finally bring someone home. For years, I had treated future domestic life as something another person would activate. Marriage first. Then house. Then table. Then Sunday dinners. Instead, I had bought the house alone. Now the table was waiting too. Mom handed me the thermos. Your dad would be furious you left Good Oak sitting 6 years. That sounds like him. He would also understand. That sounded like her. Neil backed the truck toward the garage. I looked at Vivian. She had not offered storage, had not mentioned Ardent, had not called anybody. She only asked, "Which end do you want me on?" I looked at her hands. You know that table weighs about 160 pounds. I am aware furniture has mass. Read. You run a housewares company. I also possess shoulders. I laughed. Then I pointed. Other end. Vivian took off her watch, placed it carefully on Dad's workbench, and rolled up her sleeves. For once, that was all she tried to take control of. We moved the table to Foundry Street Woodshop that afternoon. Neil drove. I sat in the passenger seat. Vivian rode in back beside a box of clamps and did not complain once about the suspension. That might have been her greatest act of restraint so far. Foundry Street occupied an old brick warehouse near the railroad tracks in Columbus. Members paid monthly dues for access to benches, dust collection, hand tools, and machines expensive enough that none of us could justify them at home. I had reserved a work bay for 3 weeks. The plan was simple. Flatten the top. Cut the mortises. Fit the legs. Finish the base. Sand until my shoulders hated me. Oil. Move it into the bungalow after closing. The plan became less simple the moment I uncovered the table under proper shop lights. 6 years of seasonal movement had opened one glue seam. One board had cupped slightly. 2 mortises Dad had marked had never been cut. Vivian stood beside me. Bad? Fixable. You said that too fast. I'm trying to convince myself. She looked at the top. What do you need? Not who can I call. Not how much will it cost. What do you need? I appreciated the improvement. Today? Help turning it over. For the next 3 weeks? Time. Vivian nodded. That was harder for her to provide. Monday morning, a supplier problem arrived at Ardent. Our new electric kettle line was failing drop tests because an internal mount had been changed without the product team approving it. Normally, that kind of issue consumed half my week. This time I had already booked Wednesday evening and Saturday morning at the woodshop. My director, Malcolm Reese, knew it. At 4 Wednesday, he stopped by my desk. We may need everyone tonight. I'm unavailable after 5:30. He frowned. This is the kettle. I know. Vivian is downstairs. I know that too. You want me to tell the CEO you have plans? No. Tell her I completed the failure analysis and Morgan can run supplier review. Malcolm gave me the look managers reserved for employees who have unexpectedly remembered they have lives. Then he nodded. Fair. At 5:22, Vivian appeared at my desk. I expected trouble. Instead, she set down a printed copy of my analysis. Good work. Thank you. Morgan is leading the 7 o'clock supplier call. I know. Vivian waited. So what? You came down here. Yes. Why? I wanted to tell you I am not asking you to stay. I stared at her. That is a bizarrely specific announcement. I considered asking. I know you could solve the supplier issue faster than Morgan. Probably. You also handed off correctly. Yes. Vivian looked toward the clock on my monitor. Go! That word did something strange to my chest. Not because she had given permission. I didn't need it. Because she had noticed the boundary and chosen not to test it. I shut down my computer. At the woodshop, I worked until nearly 10. Vivian did not appear. She did not text asking for updates. She did not send dinner. At 9:48, when I finally checked my phone, there was one message. Did the oak behave? I smiled. No. Her reply arrived. Good. I was worried you were becoming overconfident. By Saturday, the table was flat again. The open seam had been repaired. I had cut the first mortise. Vivian came only because I invited her. She wore an old gray sweatshirt this time. Is that yours? Yes. It has paint on it. I have had a life before this week. Debatable. She ignored me. I gave her sandpaper. She looked offended. You brought me here to sand. Yes. This is labor. Congratulations. Your first internship. For 2 hours, we worked side by side. Vivian was patient with sanding in a way she was not patient with people. Long passes. Even pressure. No rushing. You're good at this, I said. My aunt's boarding house had wood banisters. That explains sanding? She made me refinish them one summer after I scratched one dragging a suitcase upstairs. That sounds disproportionate. It was educational. There was more to the story. I could hear it. Vivian kept working. My parents divorced when I was 9, she said. My father moved overseas. My mother traveled constantly for medical device sales. Summers went to Aunt Ruth. You liked it? I liked her. Not the boarding house? Vivian's hand slowed. It was full of people who belonged temporarily. I looked at her. She ran it beautifully. Fresh sheets. Breakfast at 7. Everyone knew the rules. And you? I knew the rules too. She brushed dust from the wood. Clear plates. Refill coffee. Do not make guests wait. Do not leave your things in common rooms. Be useful. The last 2 words landed differently. That's why you couldn't sit at Mom's. Vivian gave me a dry look. Your mother kept telling me to do nothing. Horrifying. Deeply. Did you ever have a place where you could leave your things around? She did not answer. That was an answer. I put down my sanding block. Vivian. I have a condo. That wasn't my question. Her gaze moved to the table between us. Then she said, I know how to make a place ready for people. Quietly. I'm not sure I know how to belong in one. The workshop ventilation hummed above us. I thought about my father saying you build the table before you know who will come. Then about Vivian spending half her childhood learning never to leave evidence that she had been somewhere. For the first time, her Sunday, Mom, sounded less like pure confidence. Maybe part of her had simply heard the word home and moved before fear could catch up. I closed on the bungalow the following Friday. At 2:15, I signed 37 documents and became financially responsible for a roof older than my mother. At 3:40, I stood in the empty living room holding one key and listening to the furnace make a noise my inspector had described as not concerning yet. It was mine. The first person I called was Mom. She screamed, then accused me of hiding important information, then cried, then demanded the address even though Cassie had apparently already found it through some sister-based surveillance system. The second person I called was Vivian. She answered with, Is something wrong? That is a charming greeting. You rarely call during work hours. I bought a house. Silence. Then, what? I closed today. You bought a house. Yes. When? Offer accepted 5 weeks ago. Another silence. This one had edges. You didn't tell me. No. Why? I looked around the empty room. Because I wanted one decision that existed before she touched it. Because I had spent the last year noticing her too much and did not want to wonder whether the kitchen seemed better because I imagined her in it. Because buying a home had become the first thing I did after finally deciding I did not need a wife to begin a domestic life. I needed it to be mine first. Vivian's answer came slowly. All right, that was all. No complaint. No request to see it. No questions about price, inspection, neighborhood, mortgage, or whether the furnace noise had documentation. I smiled. You're in pain, aren't you? Severe. You can ask one question. How old is the roof? I laughed. 11 years. Acceptable. Thank you for your blessing. I expected her to ask to come over. She didn't. 2 hours later, my doorbell rang. Not at the bungalow. My apartment. Vivian stood outside holding a cardboard box. I frowned. What's that? Your things. My things? She handed it over. Inside were objects I had left around Arden over 8 years. A spare mug from the test kitchen. 2 field notebooks. A rain jacket I had forgotten in a company vehicle. A small framed photograph from a charity softball event. This is unsettling. I had facilities collect only clearly personal items from storage. You ordered people to find my belongings? No. I asked Malcolm whether anything of yours was taking up shared storage because you told me you were moving. That sounds suspiciously close. It is the line. I considered. Fair. Then Vivian added, I wanted to bring something to your new house. I looked at the box. And? I realized everything I thought of buying violated your rules. I smiled. What did you want to buy? Smoke detectors. It has those. Better ones. Of course. A ladder. I own one. Entry mats. No. Tool storage. Vivian. I bought nothing. That was harder for her than it sounded. She stood in my apartment doorway empty-handed except for things that already belonged to me. Would you like to see it? I asked. Her expression changed. The invitation mattered. Yes. We drove separately. At the bungalow, Vivian stood on the front walk for several seconds before stepping inside. No furniture. No curtains. Paint samples taped to one wall. 3 unopened boxes from the hardware store. She walked through slowly, not evaluating, trying not to. I could see the effort. Say it. What? Whatever is happening behind your eyes. The kitchen outlets are too close to the sink. Anything emotional? The floors are beautiful. Better. She looked through the back door toward the detached garage. The table goes there first? Until it's finished. And then? I pointed toward the dining room. The room was small. The 8-foot table would nearly fill it. Vivian measured the space with her eyes. It will be crowded. I know. You'll have to walk sideways behind one chair. I know. Her mouth curved. You like that? I do. Why? I thought about Sunday at Mom's. Too many people around a table too small for them. Neil's elbow in the gravy. Cassie kicking me when I said something she disliked. Vivian trying to clear plates because she had no idea what else to do with being included. Because crowded means people came. Vivian went quiet. Then she looked toward the bare wall beside the dining room window. What will you put there? I don't know. Good. I stared at her. She smiled slightly. You keep rewarding me for that answer. I'm experimenting. I walked her back toward the kitchen. At the doorway, she stopped. Read. Yeah? Thank you for letting me see it before it was ready. That sentence carried more weight than a house tour should have. You're welcome. She looked around once more. Then said, I'd like you to see mine. Vivian's condo was on the 22nd floor of a building downtown. I had been in the lobby dozens of times. Never upstairs. Her place looked exactly like I expected for the first 30 seconds. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Neutral furniture. A kitchen clean enough to make food feel hypothetical. 2 pieces of modern art. No visible clutter. Then I noticed the absence. No photographs. No mail on the counter. No shoes near the door. No jacket over a chair. Nothing that said someone had just lived there instead of approved it. Vivian watched me notice. You can say it. It looks staged. Yes. You did this intentionally? No. That was worse. She walked down the hallway and stopped outside the second bedroom. Her hand rested on the knob. You said your house needed to be yours first. Yes. I think this is the closest equivalent I have. She opened the door. Boxes. Dozens of them. Some taped. Some half open. A chair buried under folded blankets. Framed pictures still wrapped in paper. Books in plastic tubs. A chipped blue mixing bowl sitting on top of one box. I stepped inside. How long have these been here? Depends on the box. Vivian. The oldest moved with me from Baltimore. You have lived in Columbus 9 years. I know. I looked back at her. You never unpacked. Some. Your living room has 2 books. I use an e-reader. This is not a technology issue. Her face tightened. Then she stepped into the room. I moved 6 times before college. 3 more before 30. Every place was easier if I kept things contained. That stopped being necessary. Yes. When? Probably a long time ago. She picked up the blue bowl. One side had a white chip near the rim. My aunt used this for biscuit dough. You stole it? She gave it to me when she sold the boarding house. Why is it in a box? Vivian ran her thumb over the chipped edge. I don't bake. You also own cabinets. That is fair. I sat on one of the unopened tubs. Vivian looked horrified. What? That box has glass in it. I stood immediately. You could label things. I know what is in them. That is exactly what my father said about jars of screws. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Vivian sat on the floor. Actually sat. Back against the wall. Blue bowl in her lap. I joined her. You brought me here so I could fix this? I asked. No. Good. I was very clear with myself before inviting you. That sounds exhausting. It was. What do you want me to do? Nothing. I smiled. Now you understand my mother. I disliked the lesson. We sat there among 12 years of objects she had refused to decide belonged anywhere. Vivian told me about Aunt Ruth's boarding house. Guests arriving after divorce. Traveling nurses. A widower who stayed 6 months and fixed the porch railing. A woman who kept extending 1-week reservations because she had nowhere else she wanted to go. Vivian learned every guest's breakfast preference. She learned how to change sheets fast. How to carry 4 plates. How to disappear when paying adults needed the common room. What happened when Aunt Ruth sold it? I asked. She moved to Arizona. And you? I was 22. Working in Chicago. Did you visit? Twice. Why only twice? Vivian looked down at the bowl. She kept telling me to stay longer. That sounds terrible. A quiet laugh. I didn't know how. There it was. Not fear of family exactly. Fear of being somewhere without earning the right to occupy space. I understood why she had jumped at my mother's phone call. Not fully. Enough. Sunday mattered to you, I said. Vivian's expression changed. Yes. Before you knew about the workshop. Yes. Why? She set the bowl beside her. 6 months ago, Malcolm asked whether you were dating someone. I frowned. Why was Malcolm discussing that with you? He wasn't. He mentioned you never traveled on Mother's Day weekend because you always went home. That is not dating. I know. She looked annoyed with herself. Then you said if you ever brought someone to your mother's Sunday dinner, it would mean the relationship was serious because Joanne Mercer asks questions like a federal investigator. I remembered. A lunch conversation. Throwaway joke. Vivian had apparently stored it beside my mother's pecan preference and every other dangerous detail. So when she asked about a girlfriend, I knew what Sunday meant to you. And you volunteered anyway. Yes. That was insane. Yes. You knew I might throw you out. Yes. Why risk it? Vivian looked at me across the cluttered room. Because I was more afraid you would eventually bring someone else. No drama. No claim. Just the truth. I leaned my head back against the wall. That is a much better answer than confidence. I dislike it. I know. We sat quietly. Then I pointed at the blue bowl. You should unpack one thing. Vivian looked at me. No. I raised both hands. Good. Her mouth curved. I have to choose it. Exactly. She looked around the room. Then at the bowl again. But she left it where it was. For now. The table took 18 days. Longer than I expected. Shorter than Dad would have managed because he considered deadlines an attack on craftsmanship. I finished the final coat of oil on a Thursday night. Under the shop lights, the oak changed from pale gold to something warmer and deeper. Dad's pencil mark near the left mortise remained. I had sanded around it. Not perfectly. Enough. Left 3 out of 8. His handwriting survived under the finish. I also left the old height mark beneath the apron. RM 20. The table carried both of us. Saturday morning, Neil helped me move it into the bungalow. No company truck. No hired crew. Just his pickup, for moving blankets, 2 neighbors, and more profanity than furniture transportation required. The table fit exactly as badly as Vivian predicted. 8 feet long in a room that wanted 7. One chair nearly touched the wall. You had to turn sideways to pass behind another. It was perfect. Mom's house closed the following Friday. She moved into a 2-bedroom condo 15 minutes from Cassie and 20 from me. She complained about the smaller kitchen for 48 hours, then admitted she liked not owning a yard. The first Sunday after closing, I invited everyone to my house. Mom, Cassie, Neil, the boys, Vivian. This time I called her. No intercepted phone. No invitation made over my head. Sunday, I said. A pause. At your house? Yes. With your family? Yes. Are you asking me as? Vivian. She was quiet. Then, yes. That was all. Sunday afternoon, she arrived carrying nothing. I opened the door and looked at her empty hands. You okay? This is psychologically difficult. You followed instructions. I stood in a grocery store parking lot for 11 minutes. Why? Flowers. And? I left. Proud of you. Do not patronize me. I stepped aside. Come in. Vivian entered. Her gaze went immediately to the dining room. The finished table sat under the window. 7 chairs around it. 1 folding chair in the corner in case Mom decided 8 was luckier. Vivian walked closer. Her fingers stopped just above the tabletop. May I? It's furniture. She touched the oak. Found Dad's pencil mark. Then looked at me. You kept it. Yeah. It's beautiful. The same words she had used the first time she saw the unfinished chair. No. Different story, different life. Here, the words belonged to this table. Before I could answer, Mom came through the kitchen carrying a casserole. Vivian, stop admiring furniture and help me understand why my son owns 4 kinds of mustard. Vivian looked at me. I laughed. Good luck. Dinner was loud. The table was crowded. Exactly as intended. Neil knocked his knee against the apron twice. One of the boys spilled milk. Vivian waited until everyone had food before serving herself, then caught me noticing. What? Nothing. She narrowed her eyes. Halfway through dinner, Mom looked around the table. Then at me. I like this better. Better than what? The old house. Cassie looked scandalized. You cried for 3 weeks over selling it. I can cry and be correct later. She touched the new table. Your father would like this. My throat tightened. Mom's eyes softened. Then she added, he would complain you rushed the finish. That saved me. Everyone laughed. After dinner, Mom cornered me in the kitchen while Vivian was losing an argument with my nephews about whether dessert could be eaten before dishes were cleared. You know, I never cared if you brought a girlfriend home, Mom said. I glanced toward the dining room. You called monthly. I cared that you kept talking about home like it was something you would start later. I stopped. Mom leaned against the counter. You bought this place without telling me. Finished the table. Invited people. Good. And Vivian? Mom smiled. She wants to stay useful so nobody can decide she's in the way. I stared at her. You got that from one dinner? I raised you and your sister. You think I don't know avoidance when it clears my plate? Fair. What do I do? Mom shrugged. Don't make her earn every chair. Then she carried coffee back into the dining room and left me standing there. Later, after everyone had gone except Vivian, we cleaned up. I dried. She washed. Then I caught myself. You don't have to do that. Vivian looked at the sink. I know. Do you want to? She considered. Yes. Then continue. She smiled. That was the difference. After the last plate, we went into the dining room. The table looked enormous without family around it. Vivian touched the edge. I understand what your father meant now. Build the table first? Yes. She looked at the empty chairs. You made the room before you knew who would fill it. I looked at her. Not completely. Something in her expression shifted. I could have made the relationship official there. Instead, I let the silence stand. Some things needed one more choice. The following Sunday, Vivian texted me at 10:18. Are you home? I was in the kitchen trying to decide whether 3-day-old chili still qualified as lunch. Yes. Her next message took longer. May I come over? I smiled. Yes. She arrived 20 minutes later carrying the chipped blue mixing bowl from her second bedroom. Nothing else. No flowers. No pie. No strategic grocery bag. Just the bowl. I opened the door. Vivian stood on the porch in a gray sweater and black coat, both hands around the ceramic like she was afraid one careless movement would send it back into storage. You unpacked something. One thing. Good start. I dislike your tone. Come in. She crossed the threshold. Then stopped. Where should I put it? I looked at the bowl. There were several technically correct answers. Kitchen cabinet. Pantry. Dining room sideboard. Instead I said, wherever you want. Vivian's expression tightened. That is not useful. I know. Read. It's your bowl. This is your house. Both statements can survive at the same time. She looked past me toward the kitchen. For several seconds, she did nothing. Then she walked in, opened one cabinet, closed it, opened another, found the shelf with mixing bowls. Mine were cheap stainless steel. Her aunt's blue ceramic bowl looked completely wrong beside them. She put it there anyway. Then she stepped back. I leaned against the counter. How bad? Moderate. You can take it home. Vivian looked at me sharply. No. I smiled. Good. She closed the cabinet. Neither of us moved. Then Vivian said, I almost brought flowers. I believe you. And bread. Dangerous. And a better vegetable peeler because yours is offensive. There she is. I left all of them. That must have hurt. Yes. I walked closer. What did you bring instead? Her eyes flicked toward the cabinet. Something I'm willing to leave. That sentence went through me quietly. No declaration. No performance. Just a chipped bowl that had followed her from Baltimore to Chicago to Columbus and spent years in a box because unpacking meant admitting a place might be more than temporary. I reached for her hand. Vivian let me take it. My mother asked when I was bringing my girlfriend home. Her eyes stayed on mine. I remember. You made answering very difficult. I was attempting to simplify. You failed. Yes. I smiled. Then I said, I think I have the answer now. For once, Vivian Ashby did not rush me. Did not complete the sentence. Did not convert silence into a plan. She waited. You, I said. Something vulnerable crossed her face so fast most people would have missed it. I didn't. As your girlfriend? She asked. If you want the job. Her eyebrows lifted. You spent weeks criticizing my application process. I have revised it. What are the terms? No phone theft. Reasonable. No appointing yourself to family events. Annoying, but reasonable. No solving my house. I make no commitment regarding your vegetable peeler. Vivian. Fine. And one more. She waited. You don't have to earn your chair every time you come here. Her composure finally broke. Not dramatically. Her eyes dropped. Her fingers tightened around mine. When she looked back up, Her voice was quieter. I don't know how to do that yet. You don't have to know today. There was that phrase again. No deadline. No requirement. No need to make herself useful before dinner. Vivian leaned closer. Sunday? I smiled. What about it? Can I come back? Yes. Every Sunday? That sounds suspiciously like scheduling. I am still a CEO. Some Sundays. Her mouth curved. Good. Then I kissed her. There was no audience. No family waiting in the next room. No employees pretending not to listen. Just Vivian, my father's finished table a few feet away, and one blue bowl sitting behind a cabinet door where nobody had asked it to justify staying. When we finally pulled apart, Vivian looked toward the dining room. Are you hungry? Yes. I can cook. You're already trying to earn the chair. She stopped. Then, with visible effort, she pulled one out and sat down. I laughed. What? Nothing. You are very pleased with yourself. Deeply. She looked at the empty place across from her. I sat. For the first time since she grabbed my phone and volunteered herself for Sunday, Vivian did not clear anything, arrange anything, buy anything, or ask what needed fixing. She simply stayed. And in the house I had finally built before knowing who would fill it, that was enough. That's all for today. Remember to subscribe and support us.